At 4:02 a.m., long before the rest of the world has escaped the gravity of sleep, a quiet ritual unfolds behind the tinted windows of the wealthiest people on earth. Ritual so subtle, so consistent, and so deliberate that it has silently shaped empires, rewritten industries, and built fortunes that seem almost untouchable. It begins in stillness, a dim room, a glass of cold water, a notebook with creased pages, and a mind sharpening itself like a blade. There is no audience here, no noise, no applause, just a billionaire alone with the invisible decisions that will influence millions of lives by sunrise. And yet, there is something else happening in these pre-dawn hours, something few ever witness. Because hidden inside these routines is a code, a pattern, a repeatable set of behaviors so powerful that it can transform anyone who understands it. But today, we step into that world, into the habits ordinary people never see, and the mindsets that quietly build extraordinary wealth. And if stepping into this unseen world of quiet power already pulls you deeper into the minds of those who build empires, while the rest of the world sleeps, then stay close, because the habits you're about to uncover have shaped fortunes for decades. If you love millionaire wisdom like this, hit subscribe so you never miss the next classified story. And give this video a like and share it with someone who loves this kind of content. The story of billionaire habits does not begin in boardrooms, private jets, or palatial estates. It begins in the invisible moments before sunrise, in the quiet decisions no one sees, in the subtle mental rewiring that gradually separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. And as we step into this world, the first thing we notice is that nothing about it feels overwhelming or dramatic at first glance. Because billionaire transformation is not created by giant events, but by tiny shifts repeated with religious precision. Building a foundation so strong that everything else, wealth, opportunities, power automatically assembles around it. And as we explore these habits, we start to sense that every action is part of a larger, interconnected system, a kind of internal architecture that shapes the destiny of those who practice it. And that is why our journey begins not with a dramatic business victory, but with the simple awareness that the most powerful individuals on earth design their days, their energy, their focus, and even their thinking in ways so deliberate that the rest of the world barely notices the transformation until it is complete. And as we begin this deep dive, the first element that makes itself visible is the unshakable discipline that binds all billionaire habits together. Because discipline is not merely doing hard things, it is the quiet decision, repeated daily, to choose the future over the moment, to choose intention over impulse, and to choose clarity over chaos. And once this discipline becomes a permanent part of someone's identity, success begins to shift from a distant dream to an inevitability. Because billionaires don't hope to win, they build their habits in a way that makes winning the only logical outcome. But this level of discipline doesn't appear overnight. It grows from the internal narrative billionaires tell themselves when no one is listening, a narrative rooted in responsibility rather than blame, in growth rather than comfort, and in long-term vision rather than short-term gratification. And as we observe this pattern, we realize that every major achievement they accomplish later is structured upon this invisible foundation, shaping the rhythm of their days, the sharpness of their decisions, and the expansiveness of their ambitions. And this foundation becomes clearer as we look deeper into their morning routines. Because while the world sleeps, billionaires build momentum. Not out of a desire to seem impressive, but because they understand that the first victory of the day creates a psychological advantage that compounds for the next 16 hours, turning a simple morning routine into a strategic weapon for productivity, clarity, and high-performance thinking. And as we dissect this further, we see that billionaires protect their mornings the way other people protect their most valuable possessions, avoiding distractions, avoiding chaos, and avoiding anything that pulls them away from their mission, because they know that the world is engineered to scatter attention. And only the rare few who control their focus can control their future. And this mastery of focus is reinforced by how they guard their environments. choosing not just where they spend time, but also who they allow near them. Because billionaires understand that proximity is power, and every relationship either sharpens their path or slows it down. And this is why one of the most defining habits of billionaires is the intentional construction of a success ecosystem around the mentors. Thinkers, strategists, people who elevate conversations and challenge comfortable thinking. Because to grow into a billionaire mindset, one must first grow out of the environments that keep them small. And as this shift unfolds, a second, deeper transformation begins to take shape. The restructuring of their thought patterns, because billionaires do not think in terms of problems, but in terms of systems, solutions, and leverage. And this mental architecture is what allows them to transform a simple idea into a global empire, not through luck, but through repeated, methodical thinking that expands possibilities instead of shrinking them. Because once this mindset takes hold, billionaires begin to recognize opportunities long before they are visible to anyone else, identifying patterns, shifts, and possibilities in the world. The same way a seasoned pilot can read the sky. And this ability to foresee potential is strengthened by their habit of constant learning, not in a shallow motivational way, but in a deeply instructive manner, studying industries, reading market signals, dissecting failures, analyzing competitors, and refining their understanding of human behavior, because they know that the world changes rapidly, and the only way to remain ahead is to evolve faster than the environment around them. And as this continuous learning compounds, it produces a clarity that enables long-term thinking, another signature billionaire habit, where decisions are made not for tomorrow, but for the next decade. Building empires brick by brick with patience that most people simply do not possess. And this decade-scale vision naturally influences how billionaires view risk. Because unlike the average person who sees risk as something to avoid, billionaires examine it as something to understand, manipulate, and convert into advantage, approaching uncertainty not with fear, but with calculation, knowing that every extraordinary reward lies just on the other side of an uncomfortable decision. And this courage is not reckless, but trained through years of making small, bold moves that strengthen their tolerance for pressure, criticism, and unpredictability. And as they repeat this progression, their confidence becomes less about ego and more about evidence built from thousands of disciplined habits executed consistently, forming a self-trust so powerful that others often mistake it for fearlessness, when in reality, it is simply the result of mastering themselves long before they attempted to master their industries. And this self-mastery becomes visible in the way billionaires manage their energy, because they understand that performance is not just mental, but physical, and so they invest heavily in their health, nutrition, sleep, and recovery. Not for vanity, but because they know that a tired mind makes expensive mistakes. And billionaires cannot afford mental fog in environments where one decision can alter the fate of entire companies. And this careful optimization of their energy blends seamlessly into their habit of prioritizing high-value tasks. Because billionaires specialize in doing only the things that move the needle, delegating everything that drains time, attention, or cognitive bandwidth, which becomes part of an even deeper habit, respecting the value of their own time far more intensely than the world does, treating each hour as a non-renewable asset and designing their schedules so intentionally that their days become systems of impact rather than lists of obligations. And as we observe everything in motion, discipline, focus, environment design, learning, vision, risk calculation, energy management, and time mastery, we begin to understand the core truth behind billionaire success. It is not one habit, but the synergy between many habits, executed with the same consistency that engines maintain on long-haul flights. And as these habits merge into a unified identity, billionaires stop negotiating with themselves, stop procrastinating dreams, stop reacting to life, and instead begin designing it, constructing a personal operating system that grows stronger with every repeated behavior. And this operating system is what eventually separates their results from those of ordinary people. not because they are born gifted, but because their habits are engineered to produce extraordinary outcomes. And as Chapter 1 closes, we can finally see the foundation for what it truly is: a carefully built, deeply structured, invisible engine that powers every billionaire in the world. An engine born from early morning discipline, sharpened by long-term thinking, strengthened by relentless learning, fueled by intentional environments, and guided by an internal narrative that refuses to settle for anything less than exceptional. And as this foundation solidifies, it naturally prepares the way for the next stage of transformation, where these habits stop simply shaping the individual and begin shaping the world around them, leading us directly into the deeper psychological, strategic, and behavioral layers waiting for us in Chapter 2. As we move deeper into the world of billionaire habits, the landscape shifts from the foundational routines that shape their internal identity to the more advanced psychological structures that quietly govern every strategic move they make, revealing a level of mental engineering so refined that it changes the way they perceive reality itself. Because while Chapter 1 exposed how billionaires construct the inner framework that stabilizes their rise, this stage reveals how they expand that framework outward into intentional behaviors that amplify their influence, their confidence, and their capacity to maneuver through complex environments where most people feel overwhelmed. And the first pattern that becomes impossible to ignore is the billionaire habit of turning clarity into a daily ritual rather than a luxury. Because clarity is not something they hope for. It is something they build through journaling, through meticulous planning, through reflection sessions that allow them to study their own decisions the way great athletes study their gameplay. And this habit of daily self-analysis enables them to detect patterns of improvement long before others would notice, giving them an almost unfair advantage because they are constantly adjusting their trajectory with micro-corrections that keep them ahead of the curve. And this clarity naturally extends into a second deep habit: emotional neutrality, which is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Because billionaires understand that emotionally reactive people sabotage their own decisions. So they train themselves to operate with a calm, strategic mindset, even when faced with pressure, criticism, chaos, or uncertainty. Treating emotional regulation as a professional skill rather than a personality trait. And this neutrality reinforces their ability to think in straight lines when others get tangled in fear or noise, allowing them to see opportunities inside moments the rest of the world labels as crises. And this emotional stability feeds directly into their signature ability to make decisions quickly, not recklessly, but efficiently, because billionaires know that hesitation drains opportunity, drains confidence, and drains momentum. So they develop a system of rapid decision-making that filters out noise and focuses only on the essential variables, enabling them to move with speed while maintaining accuracy. And this creates another psychological shift that differentiates them from average achievers: their relationship with information. Because billionaires are not information consumers. They are information curators, meaning they carefully filter what enters their mind, protecting their mental environment with the same intensity that others protect their valuables. And to maintain this cognitive purity, they deliberately reduce exposure to negativity, gossip, low-value content, and emotional drama, choosing instead to absorb data that strengthens their understanding of markets, human behavior, and emerging trends. And this selective consumption gradually sharpens their intuition, turning it into a powerful internal compass that allows them to make high-stakes decisions with surprising accuracy. And this calibrated intuition combines seamlessly with their habit of designing their days around leverage, meaning they constantly ask themselves which actions produce the highest return for the quietest amount of time and energy. Because billionaires understand that success is not determined by how hard you work, but by how intelligently you apply your effort. And so they construct systems where their time is reserved for decisions that create exponential results-building companies, forming strategic alliances, identifying opportunities while delegating everything that does not align with their highest value, Because billionaires do not strive to be busy, they strive to be effective, and this effectiveness is amplified further by their ability to think in compound effects. Understanding that every habit, every relationship, every investment, and every decision multiplies over time, creating momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable, and this long-range compounding view influences how they treat failure, because where most people fear failure as a final verdict, billionaires treat it as raw data, analyzing it with cold precision to extract lessons and adjust strategies. Understanding that failure loses its power when seen as a teacher rather than a threat, and this reframing allows them to attempt bolder moves, take smarter risks, and innovate at levels impossible for minds trapped in fear-based thinking. And this courage is further supported by their habit of structuring their environment for peak performance. Because billionaires know that willpower is unreliable, so they design their physical and digital ecosystems in ways that make success feel natural and inevitable. Choosing offices that stimulate creativity, homes that promote calm thinking, schedules that favor productivity, and systems that reduce friction. And this environmental engineering ensures that their energy is always directed toward growth rather than distraction. And as we dig deeper, another advanced habit emerges: the billionaire ability to detach from outcomes, focusing instead on process mastery, because they understand that obsessing over results creates anxiety and limits growth, while obsessing over systems ensures that results arrive naturally. And this detachment allows them to operate with clarity, even when reality does not immediately match their expectations, reinforcing the emotional discipline that gives them an almost serene confidence under pressure, and this serenity allows them to channel their creativity in ways that lead to breakthrough thinking, because billionaires do not confine themselves to the norms of an industry. They question assumptions, challenge limits, and reimagine what is possible, using creativity not as mere artistic expression, but as a strategic tool for innovation and competitive advantage. And this creative thinking expands their ability to solve problems others consider impossible, giving them a reputation for visionary thinking that attracts the brightest minds and most valuable partners into their orbit. And this magnetism is strengthened even more by another key habit: long-term relationship building. Because billionaires understand that wealth is built between people, not just in markets. And they invest deeply in maintaining long-term trust, integrity, and mutual value, forming networks that become billion-dollar ecosystems over time. And as all these habits merge into a single psychological engine, something remarkable happens. Billionaires begin to operate from a state of strategic calm, where their emotional, intellectual, and environmental systems work in harmony, enabling them to influence their industries with precision rather than force. And they step into a realm where extraordinary opportunities flow toward them rather than being chased. And with this expansion of internal and external power, they begin shaping their world with intention, leading us into the next chapter, where these habits evolve from internal mastery to external transformation, revealing how billionaires build empires, shift markets, and make decisions that redefine entire industries. As we move into the third and most revealing stage of billionaire habits, the atmosphere subtly shifts from internal mastery and psychological expansion into a realm where decisions no longer influence only their personal lives, but begin shaping industries' economies and global narratives. And this transformation happens so gradually and yet so intentionally that most people never notice the moment a billionaire stops being merely successful and becomes a force of influence. Because everything in chapters 1 and 2 was designed to prepare them for this exact transition, where clarity merges with strategic calm, where emotional neutrality merges with vision, and where long-range thinking merges with action at a scale that the average mind simply cannot comprehend. And the first major escalation that defines this stage is the billionaire habit of deliberately engineering asymmetric opportunities, meaning they no longer chase achievements that produce linear rewards, but instead seek moves that, when executed correctly, tilt the entire playing field in their favor. such as acquiring undervalued assets during moments of market panic, entering industries right before technological disruption, positioning themselves as early adopters in emerging markets, or forming alliances with powerful individuals who open doors that would take others years to reach. And the remarkable part is that these decisions rarely look dramatic in the moment, because billionaires have trained themselves to spot subtle signals, micro-patterns, and early indicators long before they become visible to the general public, giving them the ability to act decisively at the exact time when everyone else hesitates. And this ability to perceive opportunity before it becomes obvious is not luck or intuition alone, is the compounding effect of disciplined thinking, filtered information consumption, and emotional neutrality that allows them to see clarity in chaos. And this internal clarity naturally branches into their ability to execute with precision at scale. Because billionaires understand that major opportunities collapse when teams are weak, processes are sloppy, or communication is fragmented. So they develop a habit of building elite ecosystems around themselves, teams of deeply competent people, advisors with specialized expertise, operators who can transform vision into structured execution, and partners who elevate the entire mission, creating an orbit of excellence that strengthens the billionaire's influence, far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. And this ecosystem becomes even more powerful when combined with another major billionaire habit: the ability to convert complexity into simplicity. Because billionaires often navigate environments filled with financial jargon, technological innovation, legal structures, and shifting regulations. Yet they have a rare ability to break these complexities down into simple mental models, allowing them to make quick, high-accuracy decisions even in situations where others feel paralyzed. And this simplification habit becomes a superpower during moments of crisis. Because while most people drown in overwhelm and information overload, billionaires reduce everything to the core variables that actually matter, enabling them to move first when speed is the difference between a missed opportunity and a massive win. And this speed becomes even more potent when combined with their escalating risk philosophy, which is fundamentally different from the reckless behavior people imagine. Because billionaires do not increase their risk. They increase their risk intelligence, meaning they calculate downside, build safety nets, protect capital, and diversify strategically, allowing them to take bold yet insulated steps that appear risky from the outside but internally are safeguarded by layers of preparation, legal structure, and contingency planning. And this mastery of intelligent risk transforms them into architects of their own futures, capable of making moves that redefine industries, such as launching companies that compete globally, acquiring assets during downturns, investing in large-scale technologies, or expanding into markets with massive long-term potential. And every one of these escalating moves is supported by another defining billionaire habit: narrative control. Because billionaires understand that public perception shapes opportunities, partnerships, regulations, and even market behaviors, so they begin shaping the narratives around their work, their industries, and their long-term missions with intentionality. Using interviews, media appearances, philanthropic projects, or strategic silence to align their image with their objectives. And this control over narrative allows them to create a sense of inevitability around their ventures, attracting talent, investors, and collaborators who want to be part of something larger than themselves. And this gravitational pull grows even stronger when billionaires amplify another escalating habit: the strategic art of saying no. Because as their influence expands, the number of requests, opportunities, distractions, and partnerships increases exponentially. But billionaires protect their mental and strategic bandwidth with ruthless selectivity, understanding that their time becomes more valuable with every level they climb. And this selective rejection is not coldness, is discipline. Because they know that focusing on a few high-leverage moves can outperform dozens of mediocre ones. And this focus allows them to pour concentrated energy into projects that generate large-scale transformation. Whether it's building companies that shape the future of technology, funding scientific or environmental breakthroughs, acquiring assets that alter the balance of an industry, or expanding their influence into sectors they once observed from a distance. And as these escalating decisions compound, remarkable psychological shift occurs. Billionaires begin viewing time differently from the rest of the world, no longer as a daily schedule to manage, but as a strategic resource that must be multiplied, stretched, and optimized through systems, automation, delegation, and structure, enabling them to achieve in 1 year what others might take a decade to complete. And this new relationship with time feeds into their habit of creating long-term inevitability, meaning they build systems that continue growing even when they sleep, travel, or shift focus. And this creates a sense of unstoppable momentum around their lives and businesses, making their success feel less like a streak of good decisions and more like the natural outcome of a perfectly engineered structure. And as they accumulate more success, their vision expands, but not in the way most people assume. Because billionaires are rarely motivated by material luxury at this stage. Instead, they become driven by intellectual curiosity, legacy potential, and the desire to solve problems at a scale few others can comprehend, such as energy, innovation, space exploration, global health, advanced transportation, media influence, or financial restructuring. And this shift from personal ambition to large-scale impact marks the ultimate escalation in their habits, because billionaires begin seeing themselves as contributors to the evolution of industries, not just participants. And this creates a type of pressure that refines them further, pushing them to elevate their thinking, strengthen their leadership, deepen their strategic capacity, and sharpen their emotional discipline in ways that make their earlier selves look almost unrecognizable in comparison. And as this chapter of escalation reaches its peak, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Billionaires are not created by chance, talent, or even intelligence alone. They are forged through escalating layers of discipline, clarity, leverage, vision, and emotional mastery that compound into a living engine capable of shaping not just their own lives, but the world around them. And it is this growing influence, responsibility, and power that prepares us for the final chapter, where all these habits merge into a single force that determines how billionaires build their long-term legacy and transform their success into something that outlives them. And now, as we enter the final stage of the billionaire evolution, everything that began as discipline grew into clarity, expanded into strategic dominance, and escalated into global influence, finally converges into the most defining phase of their journey, the transformation. From a wealthy individual into a long-term architect of impact, a builder of systems that continue shaping the world long after their own presence fades. And this shift does not happen suddenly, nor does it arise from external pressure. Rather, it emerges quietly and powerfully as billionaires realize that their decisions now carry the weight of legacy, meaning every choice they make, every project they initiate, every company they build, and every investment they pursue has the potential to influence millions of lives. And with this realization comes a deeper form of intentionality, because while earlier stages of success were driven by ambition, focus, and intelligent risk, this final transformation is driven by meaning, responsibility, and vision. And it begins with the billionaire's habit of designing systems that outlive them, systems that operate independently, scale sustainably, and continue compounding value even when they are no longer actively involved. Which is why at this level, billionaires pour tremendous energy into succession planning, leadership development, institutional culture, and governance structures that ensure their enterprises remain aligned with their long-term mission rather than collapsing under the weight of dependence on a single mind. And as they build these systems, another profound shift occurs. The billionaire begins to detach emotionally from short-term outcomes, no longer reacting to temporary fluctuations in markets, public opinion, political climates, or industry disruptions, but instead viewing everything through the lens of decades. Understanding that the world moves in cycles, innovation happens in waves, and fortunes rise and fall in patterns that reward those who remain steady, calm, and strategically anchored. And this emotional detachment is not cold and acidic wisdom, rooted in years of experiencing volatility, learning from crises, and mastering internal regulations so deeply that even turbulence becomes a source of clarity. And this clarity enables billionaires to make decisions that appear almost counterintuitive to the outside world, such as investing aggressively during economic downturns, expanding operations during uncertain periods, funding new ventures when others retreat, or shifting into emerging fields long before they become mainstream. And this ability to act from a long-term perspective strengthens their influence further, giving them a type of authority and trust that attracts visionary partners. Governments, institutions, and innovators who see the billionaire not just as a business leader, but as a stabilizing anchor in an unpredictable world. And this anchor role leads naturally into their next habit, the pursuit of legacy impact, where billionaires begin focusing on the deeper purpose of their work, asking questions that go beyond wealth accumulation and venture into the realm of contribution. What problem can I help solve? What breakthrough can I support? What challenge can I reduce for future generations? How can my resources advance humanity in meaningful ways? And the answers to these questions shape their actions as they begin funding scientific research, supporting healthcare initiatives, building educational institutions, investing in renewable energy, championing infrastructure development, or launching philanthropic foundations designed to operate for centuries. And the interesting truth is that this phase is not driven by guilt, pressure, or public expectation. Rather, it is driven by the billionaire's heightened sense of interconnectedness, the understanding that their fortune is intertwined with the world's stability, and that contributing to progress is not simply altruism, but a strategic extension of their identity. Because the healthier the world, the healthier their legacy, the stronger their enterprises, and the more meaningful their life's work becomes. And this pursuit of legacy also refines how billionaires define success in this final chapter, shifting from material metrics like net worth, acquisitions, or ranking lists into more intangible markers: influence, longevity, innovation, and generational continuity, leading them to make decisions with incredible patience, building foundations for their children, successors, and future leaders through principles, philosophies, and cultural codes rather than simply wealth transfers, because they understand that money without wisdom evaporates. But wisdom combined with structure multiplies, and this recognition transforms the billionaire into a teacher of the next generation, sharing the lessons that shaped their path: discipline, clarity, risk intelligence, long-term thinking, emotional mastery, and systems design, passing on not only the results of their journey, but the architecture behind it, creating a ripple of influence that extends far beyond their direct family into the teams they built, the companies they founded, the industries they shifted, and the communities they impacted. And as this legacy begins to materialize, billionaires often undergo a profound internal transformation, a sense of peace, groundedness, and perspective that emerges when they realize they no longer need to chase success, because they have already engineered success to continue without them. And this peace allows them to rise even further above short-term noise, focusing instead on stewardship, how to protect, refine, and elevate the systems they've created. And this stewardship leads to even wiser decisions, such as simplifying ownership structures, reducing unnecessary complexity, strengthening governance, decentralizing authority, and preserving the core mission that drove their ascension in the first place. And as these systems grow more stable, the billionaire enters a stage of strategic minimalism, removing any activity, investment, or involvement that does not align with their highest vision, creating a streamlined, highly intentional life centered around meaningful projects, intellectual curiosity, global impact, and inner growth. And this minimalism is not about reducing ambition, but about raising signal clarity, ensuring that every remaining action contributes to something larger, more lasting, and more purposeful than personal success alone. And as their influence matures, billionaires begin to shift from being builders to being guardians of industries, guardians of innovation, guardians of opportunities for future thinkers, and guardians of the systems they crafted so carefully over decades. And this guardianship gives their journey a sense of closure, not in the sense of ending, but in the sense of completion. Because they have evolved from a disciplined individual to a visionary strategist, to an industry shaper, to a global contributor, and now finally to a legacy architect whose impact will continue compounding long after they step away. And as the final chapter comes to a close, we see the true arc of billionaire habits not as a path of wealth accumulation, but as a progression of transformation from mastering oneself, to mastering one's environment, to mastering one's influence, to mastering one's legacy, and the realization emerges that every habit, every decision, every discipline, every risk, and every vision across their lifetime was contributing to this moment, this identity, and this enduring imprint on the world, leaving us with a profound understanding that billionaire success is not the story of riches, but the story of evolution. And this evolution is what now leads us seamlessly into the final message that connects everything we've learned to your own journey. And as you step back from this journey and let these billionaire habits settle into your own thinking, remember that this transformation is not reserved for the few. It begins the moment you decide to adopt even one of these principles into your daily life. Because the path to extraordinary success has always belonged to those who study it closely and act on it deliberately. And if you thought this story was powerful, wait until you see what comes next. Because the next chapter we unlock will take you even deeper into the mindset, strategy, and hidden frameworks of the world's wealthiest innovators. So if you're ready to go further into the secrets that shape empires, hit subscribe so you never miss the next millionaire secret.